On this week's show, Aaron, myself and the entire crew are heading on an island road trip on the west coast of Victoria. So what are we waiting for? Let's get this show on the road.
Okay.
I spy with my little eye.
Not already.
When you're with your loved ones, it's always fun to do a road trip. Unlike when you were a kid and you're too busy fighting with your brother in the backseat to enjoy the adventure, but now that we've matured into adulthood, we will appreciate the fine scenery along the way. We're stretching our legs at the wonderful Middle Island located here in Warrnambool. Middle Island is about 3.5 hours drive from Melbourne in the direction of the South Australian border. Middle Island is normally closed to the general public, though on a handful of days over summer, the Moyle Shire Council runs tours for a limited number of people. And today we're lucky enough to have Paul take us across.
Well, it looks like a unique way of getting across. Am I going to get a bit wet, I think?
Yeah, I think today you'll definitely get wet. Normally we can get across to the island on a good summer's day without actually getting wet at all.
Okay.
When the tide's nice and low, we can basically free access to the island. However, it's only council staff that are really permitted to go over to the island. As a part of the program, council have really tried to keep public access to a minimum. It's actually closed, most of the year to public access. However, during these tours, we basically try to get as many people over as we can to experience the program.
Today we've got the special privilege of heading to Middle Island to meet the well-trained penguin guardians. There's a few good reasons why we're not usually to set foot here. You see, Middle Island is the site for one very unique and successful project involving 2 Maremma dogs and a colony of little penguins.
So the dogs are there to protect the penguins, obviously. How did the foxes actually get onto the island originally, and are they still getting across?
Like I said earlier, the foxes can basically get access when the tide's very low. Foxes are very much like a cat. They don't actually like to get their feet wet unless they really have to. Foxes were getting over there in the early 2000s, but since 2005 when we started the Maremma program, luckily we haven't had any fox accesses to the beach. Mm-hmm. We do get quite a few that come down onto the sand and search the beach for food.
They're very tempted.
Yes, they are very tempted. Again, when we get quite a lot of penguins on the island, the noise of the penguins at night time is pretty much a calling card for the foxes and also cats to a potential.
So tell us a bit about the breed of the Maremma dog.
The Maremmas, Karen, are basically an Italian breed of dog. Mm-hmm. They've been bred over the 2,000 years. Primarily the dogs were used for the protection of stock animals, for sheep and goats, against things like coyotes and wolves. So again, for the Maremmas to be used here for the guardian of penguins against foxes, I don't think there's any real change for them.
Okay.
They first arrived in Australia in Portland. And that's going back in the early 1900s.
Testing you now, aren't I?
Yeah, which is quite fitting, that the fact that a dog that was once used primarily for stock protection has now been used for the conservation of a native species. And I think it's quite fitting that they first arrived in Australia at Portland and now being used in this program here in Warrnambool.
Yeah, of course, not too far away.
Not too far away at all.
Yep.
So we've got Udi and Tula, both basically sisters, and they were purchased from a breeder in New South Wales who was a recommended breeder that was suggested to the council.
So beautiful.
Yeah, definitely purebred. You can see they have a very thick coat. They use it basically to help keep themselves warm in winter, but it also tends to keep them quite cool in summer as well. With the reflective nature of the white fur.
And as you said, they're just so placid, and you just can't believe that they can do such
They
a
can
good
be,
job.
yeah, can be
good
a
job.
very aggressive dog when they need to be.
Hello.
So again, being sisters, we tend to sometimes have issues with them trying to sort out who's the boss at times. But usually they've been pretty good dogs in the 3 years that we've had them.
Well, they don't have to worry about who's wearing whose clothes, like normal sisters.
Yes, that's exactly right, fighting over toys.
So what actually do you feed them?
The dogs basically get a mix of advanced dry food, basically a specialised food formula that's designed for larger dogs. They get canned food, usually every second or third day, and then we try to give them as many fresh bones as we can. Basically it's good for their teeth and their health, and at least keeps them a bit occupied during the day when there's nothing to look at or look after while they're on the island.
Well, what an experience. Thanks for letting us get up nice and close.
No worries, Karen. Coming up along the boardwalk, you may have been looking around and thought, my God, they've got a hell of a lot of rabbits living on this island. What it actually is the penguin nest sites or the den sites where the penguins live and where the young are born. The penguins start arriving here around September. They basically arrive and sit just out off the island, and they form into what they call rafts, where you will get a large group of penguins forming a large big group. The first raft will get the signal and they'll start to head in. All the other rafts sit outside, just outside off the island, waiting until they can see the first raft get up on top of the reef. Once they see this first raft access the reef, they know it's safe for themselves to come in, and the rest of the penguins come in. They come up onto the flat platform just after dusk, and it can take anything of up to 3.5 to 4 hours for them to get from the beach to their actual den site. They pick up on the magnetic waves that none of us can see and use it as a pinpoint area to find their way back to their nest site. I think we all should be very proud, because this is the first program of its kind in the world where we're using a guardian dog to conserve a native species. I think as ratepayers and Warrnambool residents, we also have a lot to be proud of, because these aren't just my dogs or the council's dogs. These are basically Warrnambool City's dogs. Everybody who lives in this town owns these dogs. And I think we have something really special to be proud of, the fact that we've been a pioneer in a program of its kind.
Paul, you have so much knowledge. I appreciate everything we've learnt today. Thanks again for your time.
No worries, Karen.
And I guess we have to go back, so I'll better pull this dress up a little bit, not too much, and try and get across.
No worries at all.
All right, let's go.
Thanks, mate.
Coming up after the break, I visit the Griffith's Island lighthouse and also run into some obsessive compulsive birds. At the mouth of Port Fairy's Moyne River, just past the end of the Great Ocean Road, is Griffith's Island, which over 100 years ago played host to a modern-day feat of engineering.
In 1859, Rabbit Island was linked with Griffith's Island via breakwater causeways, retaining walls and riverbed silt as part of the Victorian government's plan to invest in improving local trade. Since that time, the amalgamation of Griffiths and Rabbit Islands has provided a breeding haven for short-tailed shearwater birds, more commonly known as the mutton bird.
Another feature of this little-known island is the Griffith's Island Lighthouse, which has faithfully been guiding ships into the historic Port Fairy since 1859.
The lighthouse is 153 years old and is located at the end of a scenic 400-metre walk across the southern tip of the island. The lighthouse was built at the tip of Rabbit Island, which has since been linked with Griffith's Island. The outline of the lighthouse station is marked by Norfolk Island pine rows, and until 1956, there were 2 bluestone keepers' cottages which stood close by. The gardens established by the lighthouse keepers can still be seen here today.
So, Martin, this is the lighthouse up ahead of us here.
That's correct. This is the Griffith Island Lighthouse.
What was that made out of?
Basalt or bluestone, which is the predominant building material you'll find on the island.
Right.
The island's basically entirely composed of basalt, which was from a lava flow from Penshurst, about 80 kilometres away.
Wow.
So that was, many, many thousands of years ago, but it
And
flowed
these-
basically out here, and you can see even the reef out here is formed of basalt.
Yeah, right. So all these rocks are naturally
Naturally
here
distributed,
from
yes.
from lava flow.
That's right.
Wonderful. Okay. These bluestone blocks are huge. I reckon they must weigh heaps. How much do you reckon they weigh?
Probably about 450 kilos, I would think. These blocks were put here a couple of years after the lighthouse was built, primarily because when the lighthouse keepers come down off shift, they discovered that the waves were coming crashing across this little beach here between here and their cottage. So if they wanted to keep lighthouse keepers, they better build the causeway.
Otherwise, they're doing double shifts. And I noticed there's holes in the top of them all there.
Yes, these were used for lifting the actual blocks into position, and it was a technique they'd used in Rome, developed by the Romans, of Lewis keys. And these were just a simple iron spike put in the top of the rock, loose, and then they'd drive two little wedges into the side. And once they'd driven those in, there'd be sufficient tension there for them to be able to lift this block of 450 kilos.
I mean, there's been a lot of effort go into building all this. It must have taken a little while.
Well, in fact, it only took 8 months, and that's pretty impressive considering they had to open the quarry, cut all the stone, and build both this lighthouse and also the cottages at the back. Would you like to go and have a look in the lighthouse?
I'd love to go and have a look in the lighthouse.
Originally a whaling port, historic Port Fairy was a major point of entry for immigrants and trading in Victoria last century. The last lighthouse keeper that lived on the island was here from 1929 until 1954. A short time later, the light was automated.
And you can see that it's quite a compact little area here as well. And how long were the shifts that the guy had to sit here for and just on a stool, just doing nothing?
12
watching the
hours.
light?
So during the day, they'd be doing the maintenance and also keeping an eye out at sea, obviously, for any vessels coming in.
And that was before iPhones, Game Boys, the works. So that must have been pretty painstaking.
The important thing is that this light had a particular signal and differentiated it from Warrnambool and Portland, so that a master in the vessel out at sea would know from the signal that this light gave that he was off Port Fairy.
Now, there's plenty of stories out there about lighthouses being haunted. My personal favourite, Around the Twist, you've got the ghost on the dunny and all that sort of thing. Any stories about the Griffith Island Lighthouse being haunted?
I've never heard of any, and I know the grandson of the last keeper who was out here since 1931. Don't remember any haunting. The only noises they heard at night were the penguins that got caught underneath the house.
The Island and Lighthouse Reserve is accessible to the public, but the island has large areas protected as mutton bird rookery reserves, so it's important to keep to the marked tracks. More commonly known as the mutton bird by early settlers because of its fatty flesh, the shearwater was hunted as a source of food and oil. However, today, the shearwater is a fully protected species in Victoria.
They're not the most attractive bird in appearance, but the mutton birds sure do have some remarkable characteristics, including an annual migration around the entire Pacific Ocean and a strangely obsessive-compulsive lifestyle. Each year after migration, the bulk of the colony return home here to Griffith Island, to the same burrow with the same partner on almost the same day every year. The parents will forage for food far out to sea. Meanwhile, the chicks stay back here at the burrows and eventually gain more weight than their parents. Childhood obesity, it's an epidemic. So Mutton, I've heard all about these amazing mutton birds. The whalers used to eat them. They tasted like lamb mutton, full of oil. They do this amazing migration around the Pacific Ocean. Where are they?
Oh, they're not going to be here at the moment, Aaron. They won't come down till sundown.
Right.
So we ought to come back later and you can see them then.
You can see, so all these burrows will be full then.
Yes.
You can see there's holes everywhere in the land here. Now, I'm guessing it's probably not too safe to walk over them.
Certainly not. In fact, we don't encourage anybody to go into the mutton birds. They're a preserved area, and if you do, you're likely to break a bone.
Or a bird.
You could do both.
You could do both. So we'll come back later on, hey?
I suggest that.
Sounds good. So Martin, it's been a few hours. We've donned a little bit warmer clothes. I've got the jeans on, but nothing up top. I've got a hoodie over there because it is getting a little bit chilly. We've been off at the pub for a meal and we're ready for these birds to come in. What do you reckon's going to happen?
Well, they'll be here probably in about 10 minutes, I suppose. We've got to get it pretty dark. And then they'll all come in a large flock. And they'll circle round. And these birds are flying around at probably about 30 kilometres an hour in all directions. It's just poetry in motion. It's the best way I can describe it, because these birds are just consummate flyers. They'll fly around, they'll come progressively lower, so they'll almost be flying in your face, and then they'll head straight down to their burrows. And, you know, it's all over relatively quickly, 10 minutes.
How many would you expect would be coming into land?
Well, the males and females will probably both be out at sea, so you might have 20,000 on the island in this area.
Wow. Okay, that's a lot. Here he is right here. This is like extreme bird watching. This guy's running away into his burrow. What's most unusual is when they're flying through the air, they're like stealth fighters. They are absolutely silent in the air. And there's hundreds of them. But as soon as they hit the ground, they don't land, they fall. It's pretty humorous to watch, actually. Well, Martin, thank you very much for sharing with us your expertise. You're an absolute wealth of knowledge. The birds have all landed, and I think that's just about it for tonight.
I'd say so. I think they're looking forward to bed as well. But thanks for coming down to Griffith Island. It's a lovely spot to visit.
Thanks for having us.
I think you'll enjoy it.
Coming up after the break, we're far out at sea to visit Victoria's only volcanic island.
Today we're up bright and early, as you can see, for the final day of our road trip. And I've got something extremely exciting to show you. We've got Australia's only offshore volcano. Hey Russell.
Good morning, Karen. How are you?
Good morning.
Come aboard.
Thank you.
Russell Williams from Port Fairy Boat Charters is our skipper for the day, and he knows these waters better than anyone else. Lady Julia Percy Island is located 22 k's southwest from Port Fairy, out in our deep blue sea. How do you get there, you ask? There's only one way. Lady Julia Percy Island is also known as the submarine volcano. It's about 640 acres in size, and the lava flows have created an unusual flat top and almost vertical cliffs around the island.
Some very interesting information for you at home. This island was actually formed over 7 million years ago. This was caused by violent underwater eruptions and is related to the final separation of Australia from Antarctica.
It is listed as a geological monument of national significance by the Geological Society of Australia. But don't think you can go and camp out on Lady Julia Percy. As a nature reserve, her land is off limits to the public, and so are the seals.
Russell, we made it, and it was a little bit of a rough ride this morning.
Yeah, it can be a bit of a rough ride up here at times. Like we've just had a bit of a front go through and cop a bit of swell. And once you get here, it's quite usually pretty good.
Oh, it's gorgeous, and we had a beautiful sunrise. How long have you been involved with coming to this island?
Oh, I come here with my father over 50 years ago. He was fishing, and my grandfathers and that, and uncles, they all fished out of here. And
You were saying 150 years of fishing in your family in the area.
Yeah, I'm the last. My son.
Is he keen to get on board? Or?
No, he's a baker. I don't know what happened there.
Okay, so tell us a little bit about what's underwater here. What can people catch?
Oh, in this particular spot, what we call the landing, we used to put cray pots in here, get crayfish, And if we're just fishing trevally and stuff like that along this area, white pointers, a lot of white pointers here,
And do you reckon we'll see any sharks today?
if you're lucky.
If we're lucky.
Yeah.
All right, well, I won't be jumping in.
Yeah. Not a great place to go swimming, I assure you of that. Yeah.
There's said to be about 20,000 fur seals here on the island. In the 1800s, there were gangs of fur sealers that would actually come onto the island. They'd get dropped off for months on end and then collected when they had the seal skins and blubber. Well, the seals actually are making a really strange noise. What? It sounds a bit like sheep.
Yeah,
They're
they get like
barring,
that.
aren't they?
They go like that all night. When we used to come up here, they drive you mad.
And apparently they're a bit on the nose, the seals, if you're up close.
Oh yeah, they can be with doing their business and everything.
So statistically about 20,000 now, and has there been more in the past?
Well, ever since I've been here, there's been always that amount. They come and go, say in February and that, they'll go away hunting and there'll be not quite as many. The sharks get quite a few at times.
Russell, tell us about some of the other wildlife that's found on the island.
Well, in this area here, you've got fairy penguins. They go up there and they lay their eggs under the rocks there. And up on top, you got the shearwaters or mutton birds. It's quite a big rookery of them up just around this area up along here. Other birds, you got hawks, harriers, and that sort of thing. And you got kelp gulls, which have only been here for the last 10 years or so. And rabbits. There's still a few rabbits on the island. In the early days, there's thousands upon thousands of rabbits there.
Yeah, they breed pretty quickly,
Yeah.
don't they?
And they've been trying to eradicate them ever since. But the old rabbit is a pretty hardy specimen, so he hangs on pretty well.
I sure do.
Yeah.
They're talking about underwater again. Apparently there was a shark attack in 1964. Do you know much about that?
Yeah, it was Henry Bors. He come up here on the Maremma Cay. The shark come up and took his leg off right across here. He's lucky to be alive, but to get him home, you can see how long it takes you to go home. And this boat's a bit quicker than what that was, and it'd take an hour and a half to get home.
And that's the main shark attack that's happening there? It's not too many others?
You only get occasional divers up here, and a couple of them have had a couple of scares. And other than that, you don't see a lot of people up here. A few anglers or something.
I'm happy on the boat and enjoy it from here.
Yeah, best place to be. We come up here quite regular and just sit here and people take it in, have their lunch and have a good time and a nice day.
Beautiful. Well, let's enjoy. Well, it's time to head back to Melbourne. We've really enjoyed ourselves on our island road trip. We got to see Middle Island, Griffith Island and Lady Julia Percy. But unfortunately, all good things must come to an end.
That's right, Kaz, all good things must come to an end, including this episode right now. If you want to learn more about any of the segments you've seen on today's show, though, you can check out our website at victoriasislands.tv or follow us on Facebook and Twitter. See you again next week for another episode of Victoria's Islands.